third year in a row, Lab Shul, and we invited Romamu and some other communities, created an end of Tisha B'Av program at a church. And it was about rising from the rubble, and it was about Tisha B'Av as the day in which we think about what is broken in the world as Jews, thinking about our Jewish history, but as people. And we invited Christians and Muslims and Hindus and Zen practitioners and others, and we created a program which is about what's broken in the world. Can we put a spotlight on it? Can we highlight it? Can we do something about it? And that was our kickoff for the High Holiday season. We did it this year in the UN Chapel, and then went and stood by the Isaiah Wall, and talked about what does it mean to step up as people. And the number of people who showed up who had never been to a Lab Shul thing before and didn't even know about it, who then started coming because they felt, oh, my voice as a human being is welcome here. So that's just one example. I can think of dozens more, but it goes back to the simple transparency of dignity. That we have something to offer here. It is powered by the Jewish tradition, and its aim is human dignity and intimacy and social change. I think people resonate deeply with this messaging, no matter where they come from on the spectrum.
Yeah, I think the simple answer to your question is we don't know. We don't know what it's going to look like any more than I think people could in the 4th century before the Common Era have known what it would look like when biblical religion met the Hellenistic world. There are some people, again, who I think feel that it's all downhill from here. It's going to be dissipation. It's going to be dilution. It's going to mean that Judaism won't be what it has been. And there are other people who say, bring it on. We don't know what it's going to look like. We're in a radically different demographic situation than we've been certainly for the last, 20 centuries. And at the same time, we're in a radically different spiritual situation, I believe, in human life. The question is, are we going to hold up our end of the process? What that outcome will be, I don't think any of us can say, and it won't be a single outcome either. It'll be probably multiple different outcomes. But I'm much more concerned about whether we're going to enter into this process with seriousness, with integrity, with openness, with transparency, et cetera. Because I think if we do, then I think something good is going to come from it.
The question from the middle.
Hi, my name is Neil Zuckerman. I'm one of the rabbis at the Park Avenue Synagogue in Manhattan. And Amichai, this is for you, getting back to your suggestion of the category of Ger Toshav. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to expand on that a little bit, in particular whether that just simply creates another category, right? If we're talking about radical inclusion, radical welcoming, where does, it's not either or, you are a Ger Toshav, and what, A, is that another category? B, what might that look like, and what would the implications be for the community?
Great. So thank you for that question, Neil. I have been looking into this question for the last few months. Rabbi Lewidis mentioned this earlier today. A few of us are looking at it from the conservative movement and elsewhere. Here's the basic fact that I'm sure you're familiar with, as many of us are. I get about 3 to 5 requests a week to officiate a wedding. Right now, because of my recent JTS graduation and my own decision, I say no to 3 of them or more. How I say what I say, it's its own issue. But I want to find a way to not say no. Because when I say no, good chances are, and I've got data, I'm sure we all do, they walk away. They've been hurt, never mind the circumstances, and they just feel like, oh, well, sure you can send me to somebody else, but I'm second best. I want to find a way to say yes. I want a win-win. Now, halakha has evolved over the centuries wisely and has morphed in many, many ways. Ger Toshav is a biblical concept that did or did not exist as we know it now. As Michael mentioned, we have Yirei Hashem. We have other historical eras in which Jews and Gentiles lived together in some kind of a porous way, more or less. Certainly there's not been a time, I think, in Jewish history, as open and as possible as now for these mix and matches. Ger Toshav is another category. It is the permanent resident prior to being a citizen. It is an ally. It is me saying to a couple, welcome to the family. We've got a tradition, we've got rules, we've got stories, we've got tales and tools. We'd love to welcome you in. We're trying to figure it out. Just join us. See what it feels like to say yes to being part of this home where you will learn about our traditions together. And I'm not asking you to convert, because conversion is dollar to shekel. It's either or. And people from theological suspicions because of their parents, because they're not exactly faith motivated, might want to live a Jewish home with a Jewish partner and buy into the Jewish story, but they don't want to convert. So can I still say yes in some way? Can it be a win-win? I don't have the time to get personal and talk about my own experience with this situation, but I am dealing with the situation in my own household. And so I see a potential win-win. If we figure out Ger Toshav, and if you want to work on it together, I'd love to. There are several other rabbis who are thinking about this. Can we reclaim a third category, not to make our life more complicated, but to find a way to invite the many who choose to choose? And then scaffolding and the faith that John talked about, I think can play a big part here. The last thing I want to say is that, as Avi said, we are at an age of 70 faces. Judaism is becoming many, many things. We are not one size fit all. One size fit all is one size fit none. So there are schisms, and there are some people who will not respect this category, and people who want to marry a full-on blood Jew will have to go and look at the Sifrei Yuchsin and all the lineage books. That's a reality. It's the family I come from. But for many of us, there is the desire to find a solution. And I think, humbly, and I am at the beginning of learning on this, that this Ger Toshav status can become a way for us to welcome everybody in and not lose our loyalty to the Jewish halachic process and to the tribal reality we come from.
Just a quick comment, mostly to the previous question, if I may. A couple weeks ago, I was at my shul, and a guy gets up and gives a whole long talk about how he grew up Missouri Baptist and the comparisons between Missouri Baptist and Litvish, and how they're really the same if you get over it. And I just want to say, like, it's not only one size doesn't fit all. Some of our non-Jewish people in our midst are looking for forts. And if we just make ourselves all ports, we haven't done anyone any good. So I just want to recognize that this Missouri Baptist just had his son have his bar mitzvah at an Orthodox synagogue because he was looking for a fort. And if we just, so I just want to sort of hold up the other end. I think there's another tension there, which is, as I think we need to approach this without any fear and say, when we need ports, we'll have ports, and when we need forts, we'll have forts, and we can just be transparent about those aspects. It might come at the cost of our niching of Judaism that we lose a sense of Klal Yisrael. So let's just say that.
Right.
Let's just say that. Let's move on, but let's just say that.
And that may have happened already.
Yeah.
Okay, another question in the front. And then we'll get back. So go ahead.
Hi. I love what all you've had to say, and I'm all with you about the inclusion. But I want to go back to the on-the-ground situation in congregations where we have, in conservative reform and others, we have non-Jewish members of the congregation, many of them. And part of feeling a sense of belonging would be you need to know me as well as I need to know you. And I think for many who are, let's say, Christians who have come from a different system, or we come from challenge, question, we don't have a particular answer, but for them, we don't know where they're coming from. So wouldn't it be helpful to, in the congregations, to be able to have someone come and talk about, or maybe themselves, talk about their Christianity, for example, and say what it means to them, that their faith, and teach us about what's different or similar. And then when in that process we're saying we want to know you as much as you want to know us. And until they really get that message that we want to know as much about you as the other way around, there can still be that rift.
I mean, I agree with that. I think that very often what I hear from people directly or indirectly who aren't Jewish is that we are looking to them to solve our problems and to allay our woes of the future. And so we are not looking at them as human beings with stories and issues and complicated stuff. We're looking at them as potential. And I know that this has been a big and in many ways positive shift from what we used to do, but it's still highly, highly problematic. And so what you're talking about is actually asking somebody what their story is rather than saying, we are totally inclusive, please come in and do things exactly the way that we do. Which is, I think, that is what we say, whether we're honest or not. I think that's what we say. And for many rabbis who do interfaith marriages, I think very often it's exactly that. I will do it, and the undercurrent, and maybe very explicitly said, is because you are going to do this according to what I need you to do. You are going to do everything as if you were Jewish, even though I know you're not. I will close my eyes to that. Totally different than, wow, you have an interesting story, whoever you are. What might that be, and how could we hear it? I keep thinking in this discussion about a great book I love by Harvey Cox, a professor of Christianity at Harvard Divinity School, who wrote a book called Common Prayers about his journey as a Christian scholar through the Jewish life cycle as part of his interfaith marriage and raising a Jewish child. And it is like all of what somebody who is knowledgeable about one tradition can actually bring and enrich to another tradition. And I hear that in what you're saying.
Our final question.
So forgive me, it's not a question, but offering of some information and to bring to everyone's attention what my sense this entire day, the spirit of my Rebbe, Zalman Schachter Shalomi, Alav Shalom, hovers over this amazing day. He was the Rebbe of both and, as well as very well could have been the reclaiming of reading the Targum, chanting the translation of the Torah, that Amichai, that I know that you do and many of us here in the room too.
He was there first.
Amen. Amen. Well, it goes back 2,000 years in the return to Jerusalem, as we know. So this January's Ohala, the gathering of Jewish Renewal Rabbis, Rabbi Daniel Siegel, who was the first musmach of Reb Zalman, is going to be bringing some of Reb Zalman's late work that Reb Zalman did not finish about Ger Toshav. This is something that he struggled with, and one of the things that he told us all was that he could only go so far, and that it's up to you all, my students, my Talmidim, to take it further, because he came from an Orthodox Chabad background, and he couldn't make kind of choices that we can make. And so we need to remain authentic, but at the same time hold on and not leave behind somehow the wonderful wisdom tradition that we bring. So if anybody's interested and not going to be at Ohala, come see me after the session. We'll get each other's email address, and I'll tell you after January how you can find out the information of what Reb Daniel is going to be presented. I'm almost positive it's this January. And I'm sure it's information that you're going to want to know too. You probably may already know about it. I know David does.
Right.
Okay. David Ingber, that is, of
Yeah, yeah.
course.
Yeah, it's huge.
All right. So with that, we're going to close out the session. Do you want me to just, do you want me to do,